email, and that way you will be on my master list. And I assure you, it will not be used for financial solicitations. Okay, it's just a matter of staying in touch with each other. And if something happens, I like to be able to be in touch with you directly. So once again, Rav Davids, RAVDAVIDS @gmail.com. If you have not sent me an email, I'm looking around, most of you actually have. It's the other folks. Please do that so that my list can be up to date. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'tzivat. That's great. And by the way, one of the things I did last night was to notice the professionals who were making everything happen. So that if, for example, a wandering rabbi happened to trip over a sound cord, there was somebody who rushed in and readjusted the sound cord. And there were people monitoring security in the entrance and the exit. I know that Hannah Gold works with us each and every Shabbat morning, and I don't want to take that for granted. We have a great group of support people, and Hannah, thank you, just like that, and we really appreciate your support in allowing this to happen. Okay, all right, enough being nice. Several people, unfortunately, one is not now visible, but several people in our community are on the, both are visible, on the good side of cancer treatment. And in terms of checking in, I'm not going to mention names, but if you would like to mention a name about where you are with that, that's totally appropriate. We shared the beginnings, you went through it, we at least cared, and both of you and maybe others as well are doing well, and that's great, and we're thrilled about that. So checking in, anyone want to offer? Cindy?
I have 6 weeks, 1 day, 10 hours left of chemo. But who's counting?
You don't have the
side effects, but they're manageable.
Yeah, you don't have the exact seconds in terms of how many seconds, no? Right?
It just depends what time I take it. So, but it's at 7 p.m. on the 26th. I'm done ish. So that's Sukkot present.
Okay, and what
they're anticipating complete remission, but you never know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And by the way, you'll remind us, because when you finish, Cindy, we'd like to do a communal gomel benching, a blessing for having allowed us to go through this. So at the right time, when you finish, we'll do that. So that's super. That's super. Any other checking in? Lisa Beth, it's like, where's Waldo? Okay, Lisa.
I just have to say, for those of you who know me, we are finally back in Southern California, and I feel like we have reached paradise. We're in Dana Point. I have a view of the Pacific Ocean as we speak, and I cannot tell you how elated we are.
I think you could bench Gomel for that too. That's really terrific. So you're at Dana Point?
We're in Dana Point, and we've only been here for 2 weeks, but boy, we do love it.
Okay, and I'm not going to push, but when you have the ceremony for putting up your mezuzot, all of us would like to be invited and fed. So
it's a date. It's a date.
Okay, that's terrific. One more time zone conquered. Any other sharing of life cycle or anything else happening? Okay, Merle.
We went to our first in-person service last night. Since whenever COVID started, it feels like it was a life cycle ago. and at our new congregation, and it was wonderful, but a very strange feeling to be in person.
Yeah, yeah.
It was,
And the good news is that you could have temperatures of 110, 115, and it's wonderful.
and we came home to a marvelous storm. I mean, we and if I go to shut my sound off, it's because our next door neighbor is felling trees that uprooted last night.
Wow.
So, yeah. You never know what you're going to have here with a storm.
I get it. I get it. I think that's great. Okay. I'd like to, I'm sorry, toss in a personal life cycle thingy. On Wednesday, Risa and I will be celebrating our 58th anniversary. And so, yeah, she has amazing patience. But anyhow, that's really going to be fun. And we are doing a little variation on Jewish celebrations. We're ordering in Indian. We debated, but we like Indian. I mean, what can I tell you? It's an assimilated Jewish family. Any other life cycle, Doris?
No, I just wanted to add to what Merrill said, that it was our very first time being out in the synagogue family outdoors, and after a year and a half or however, because we've been sitting home and doing it right here in my office, watching it on the screen. And boy, was really wonderful to see everybody. And the only funny thing is we were the only ones that brought dinner. Everybody else left and we were sitting by ourselves. But we won't do that next time.
We brought dinner 2 evenings in a row and sat with 2 other people. So last night we didn't bring dinner. I whatever. Yeah. So that's KFC's loss. Okay, that's fine. And Herman, how are you doing with vision? Things are okay? Okay, good. Anything else, life cycle or events happening in your families? If not, we'll move on. Okay, very, very good. A little bit of calendar. Wednesday, August 18th, as part of our anniversary celebration, Wilshire Boulevard is presenting at 8 p.m. I think 8 p.m. I'm not sure of the time. On the 18th in the evening, presenting a symphony based around the liturgy, the music of the High Holy Days. It's a symphony. The High Holy Day music is set into a symphony. So all you have to do is go to the Wilshire calendar, click on it, and it's there. So that's the 18th. It should be beautiful. Saturday evening, August 21st, Jim Ruxin, The Sense of an Ending. Jim is not here. Oh, there's Jim. There's Jim. I just didn't see your face. Okay.
There we go. Hi. That picture is not for tonight. That is for next Saturday.
Yes, we said August 21st.
Yes. Okay. It's a very unusual movie. It has a lot of different personalities, and the only assignment I can say is tell me why it's a Jewish movie. And we'll have fun talking about that, because nothing is mentioned that is Jewish, but it has everything to do with humanity and our understanding of others and our ability to see other people as they really are. And the performances are wonderful. Charlotte Rampling and Jim Broadbent. It's a lovely film, British in the best sense of the word. And we have a lot of new people joining our group this week. I reached out to the Pacific Northwest Jewish groups, and I got 30 new people who expressed an interest in participating. We'll see if that translates into attendance and participation. And some of the Yiddish groups produced some responses from people who, and it's very interesting. Some guy said, you know, my parents were Orthodox, but I'm not, and I'm a lapsed Jew, and I really feel badly about it. And I want to reestablish my Jewish connections. And I said, wow, this is the group for you, because whatever interests you about Judaism, you'll find in the group. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him. Very interesting history. Lots of people coming up.
How can we get it, Jim?
Oops.
Is it on your website?
I can't hear anybody, so I'm going to
How How do they connect into it, Jim? Okay, Jim, how do they connect into it? How do they get to the film series?
Fuck.
The film is on Amazon Prime.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good. And Hannah Gold has put up 7 p.m. August 18th, and the title of the program is Baruch Hu to Beethoven. Whatever, they're alliterations. I don't know if they make sense, but fine. Baruch Hu to Beethoven, and there's registration there. We're going to be watching it, and so forth.
Rabbi?
Yep.
Rabbi? It's Joanne.
Oh, what?
Rabbi?
Yes, yes. Joanne.
Yeah, Jim's film is also available at the library for rental.
Okay, very good. All right, we're gonna move forward. It's so good. More and more people are coming on. Just for me to continue nagging, please send your email address to me so that we can be in touch with each other. Saturday evening, August 28th. This is an announcement to make all public rabbis quiver and quake. Saturday evening, August 28th is Slichot, the Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah. And Wilshire University putting on a very nice array of teaching and study and then liturgy for Slichot, the Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah. That's the 28th. And in case you're interested, yes, Monday, September 6th is Erev Rosh Hashanah. So, Cindy, any other announcements or anything else happening?
We're planning lunch in the sukkah. Cammie Gordon will be our speaker. We have to check with the preschool. It's going to be at the Irmis campus because they have an open canopy sukkah, as opposed to the university one is more enclosed, and we just feel to be safer there. And it'll be in the bulletin as soon as we confirm the details.
Okay, cool. Okay, we're all set to get started. Great. It is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to see everybody here. Karen Sarachek is not going to say a word, but a little bird told me that she has a significant birthday coming up, and I'm just going to slide over without comment a little happy birthday to Karen quietly without announcing it to the entire world. Okay, happy birthday, Karen. Okay, if you want to know, we are on Deuteronomy 17, verse 8 and following. In the New Cloud, we are on page 1295. In the women's commentary, 1145. Okay, I'm going to do this because Risa is not here, even though, well, she should be. But I am holding right here something that's called Dabri Torah, Perush Nashim La Torah. Speak Torah, but in the feminine, Dabri, not Daber, Dabri, speak Torah, a commentary for women to the Torah. And lo and behold, it is based upon the women's Torah commentary of the Women of Reformed Judaism here in the United States, North America. And this has now been distributed because of what we do as a movement, because of the Women of Reformed Judaism and so forth. This Hebrew commentary of the liberal Torah, women's Torah commentary is now being distributed to the congregations in Israel. I think that's a pretty serious thing. And okay, I'm going to do it. This distribution is made possible by a contribution by Shoshana Dweck and our mother, Risa Davids. So we're kind of pleased. This is now in the hands of Israeli liberals, the women's Torah commentary in Hebrew, available for Israelis And that's just a major step forward. And Cindy, if you wonder women's groups and why do I need and what's the point, you don't wonder. But in case other people wonder, that's the work that you and your community do. And we can't forget that or assume somebody else handles it. So thank you into the women's pipeline. And thank you for that. Okay, verse 8. Verse 8. If a case is too baffling for you to decide, be it a controversy over homicide, civil law, or assault, matters of dispute in your courts, you shall promptly repair to the place that the eternal your God will have chosen. Okay. This is the Torah, folks, right? It talks about Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur and Kashrut and all that kind of stuff. What do we have here in verse 8? What is verse 8? The very important lesson to us clearly in the book of Deuteronomy. What is verse 8, first of all, attempting to set out? Please, Fern.
That Torah also will govern civil matters.
Totally. That as a matter, if you back up a little bit, verse 29 previously or verse 17:1, you have a continuing exploration of Jewish religious duties. Fine. And yet in the middle of it, civil law, the courts, because the Torah doesn't see. We have somebody who should mute. I think we're hearing something. The Torah doesn't separate civil law, religious law. The Torah teaches the fullness of Jewish community experience. So yes, it does Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, not so much Rosh Hashanah, but Yom Kippur and so forth and so on, Pesach, Shavuot, all those good things, Kashrut, yes. It also does courts, sitting of courts, because the Jewish view of a regulated life does not really separate between religious and civil. It takes all of that to make a community. It takes all of that to allow what needs to be done to be happening. Okay, so here we have a piece of civil law, and what does it say? If a case is too baffling. Now we have a bunch of lawyers here. Tell me about baffling in a courtroom. I'm sorry, this is baffling. Fern, you have your hand up. Okay, what?
Well, it's not a legal word that one would ever use. It's a very subjective word, and the law tends to use objective language. I just wanted to comment that that if civil law is part of religious law, then we have exactly the situation we have in Israel, which is that there's a battle for any kind of modernization because it's governed by Torah.
I'm really sorry you noticed that. Yes. Okay. Wait. That was a short answer. When you have a rabbinate that is a chief rabbinate, you have a government-connected major involvement in human life and personal life. And there is a chief rabbinate. Yeah, I think we should be aware, just because it's interesting, that right now in this new coalition government, one of the things that is being debated for the first time in Israel's history is making the chief rabbinate's supervision of kashrut open to competition. That is to say, other Orthodox groups, if this is adopted, would have the right to issue their kashrut. So if someone has the chief rabbinate kashrut, that's terrific. If someone has this Orthodox community's kashrut, but not the chief rabbinate's kashrut, the new law would permit it. Is a little bit of pluralizing there, a little bit. It doesn't resolve your problem, but it is an interesting thing. In Israel today, there actually already are different forms of kashrut. The conservative movement has introduced what they call an ethical kashrut, which means that not only must the restaurant or whatever observe the laws of kashrut, but they also have to treat their employees, their staff, the people they buy food from, the distributors and so forth. They have to be operating morally, paying their workers, treating their workers appropriately. And if you meet those standards, the conservative movement offers that form of kashrut. I think that's a good thing. I think
Rabbi, I'm sorry.
go, please.
I think the issue of divorce is probably the worst example of what this creates.
And you're talking about the aguna, the
Yes.
woman, the chained, anchored woman, the woman who cannot get married because the husband will not give approval for it. And the answer, of course, again, is yes. Very simply, yes, you are pointing to what we would consider to be serious human rights issues inside a democratic Jewish state.
And financial.
Rabbi,
It sounded like someone was singing Mayim, Mayim, and I'm sure that wasn't the case.
Rabbi,
Yes, please, Steve.
I just want to say that in over 40 years of practicing law, I never had a case that was baffling.
Yeah, well, that's what Fern said as well.
I always knew exactly what was right.
But you have to admit, Steve, this is just a private comment between you and me, that every once in a while, a judge's comment could be baffling.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean once in a while? That's a daily occurrence.
Okay, so
You can say wrong sometimes.
Last night you had the chutzpah of asking me whether I ever disagreed with a preaching rabbi. I held on to that question, Steve, because I thought it was chutzpah, because every rabbi is correct. Moving on. Okay. In the Israeli court system, you have the Supreme Court, which is not like our Supreme Court. The Beit Mishpat Gvoa, the Israeli Supreme Court, can make a ruling. The Knesset can pass a law. There is no constitution. Not a binding law in terms of a major category, but a simple law to override the Supreme Court. So the system is not like ours. In addition to that, you have a rabbinic court, and the rabbinic court makes rulings, and they sometimes run into conflict with each other. And we're not going to go into details, but the uncomfortable marriage of law, civil and religious, is here as well, because look what happens. If you have your court system, it says in verse 8, and you go to your courts and it's baffling, what do? It says you should go to the place that God chooses, go to Jerusalem. What's hanging out in Jerusalem? The priests. You go to the priests. And if it's too complicated for the civil courts, the bottom line is, Fern, a religious court has the last, ultimate, final word, because they speak in God's name. Brad.
But this also refers to a magistrate. Is that magistrate not possibly a lay person? It says a Levitical priest or magistrate.
Okay, and the the Hebrew is shofet, so I don't want to mix with magistrate as being, you know, anything other than shofet, a judge, okay? And appear before the Levitical priest or the magistrate in charge at that time. Yes, there is an implication that maybe there is a major shofet in Jerusalem who could make a ruling, okay? Yes, that is that. This is not totally clear. What is clear is we have an interesting word, pele. The text begins, ki yafli. The translation is, if it's too baffling. The word pele in Hebrew means wondrous. It's like astounding. Baffling is a little bit different. And I'm going to hold to it. Pele, the God is Osei Fela. God is a wonder worker, right? It doesn't say God is a baffling worker. So I'm taking issue with the word baffling. So if something is too wondrous, too beyond your ken, and it's still difficult, the next translations are hard too. The translator says homicide, dam ladam. But there are blood issues. Dam is blood, right? There are blood issues which are not murder issues. And what is dam ladam? What is a blood issue, for example? What's a blood issue in Jewish law? Menstruation. It's a blood issue. Is this menstrual blood or blood from an injury? Not going to go into the details, but it is a factor in Jewish law. So, bein dam ladam is translated as homicide, but the rabbis in the Talmud will expand it so that issues of blood, because issues of blood in Jewish law are deeply serious. Deeply serious. And to know when or if a woman is menstruating then determines sexual intercourse in a married couple. It determines, even has application into divorce law. So what looks like a simple translation here in the Talmud becomes more complicated. The next one says bein din ladin, and it translates it as civil law, but it's not always civil law. There are differences between, in the Torah legislation, in the Talmudic understanding, there are differences between laws which are considered to be rational and understandable and laws which are not. And can someone give me a big example of a law that the rabbis understand to be not rational? That is a law, part of the 613 mitzvot. But give me an example of a law that is not rational. Anybody, Steve?
Mixing wool and linen.
You got it. Mixing wool and linen, that is definitely in that category. And so the Talmud will look at this, first of all, to say it's not just murder, it's matters of dealing with blood, it's not just civil legislation, it's deciding whether something is rational or super rational in the legal system. So what happens is when you have a legal system based upon a revealed document, the rabbis have to use an electric can opener to open up the verse and make it bigger so that they then can envelop and create a system of law which is not just for one day at one time, but goes on beyond that. It then goes on nega lenega, or assault, nega lenega. But the same word, please, Fern.
I just wonder what is the rationale that is given for laws that don't make any sense? I mean, is it like the parents saying, because I told you so?
Someone very wise said, it was Rabbi Leader, that in his home growing up, the family valued independence and autonomous decision-making, except Steve's father said, in this house, there is no democracy. Okay, so yeah, democracy is for outside the house, in the house, no democracy. So we'll let that sit. The answer to your question is there are laws, according to the rabbis in the Gemara, as they look at it, which are designed to test our faith. And they exist. The Hebrew would be stam. They just are. They just are. And your job, Fern, is to separate linen and wool and not to worry about that doesn't make sense, because the rabbis say it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't. So they look at this and they expand it. Penina, Shabbat Shalom, Penina. Oh, you're muted
Yeah,
there.
okay. First of all, Shabbat Shalom. You hear me now?
Yes.
I think that nega can also be translated into a disease, like an
Yes.
illness. And also dam le dam could also be a matter like that. And even the wool and the thing could be issue that you can all put together, as today would call it medical. It could be allergies. It could be stuff that you will hurt you physically and disturbs your life physically. So
Yes.
it's actually, it doesn't really becomes something that you'll be punished for if you're going to do it, but you are going to be affected by it physically. So, and dan ledam could be also a family matter. That's something that you have to translate as something that's happening within the family that the court.
Or a blood feud. A blood feud.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's how I look at it. Because nega is also a disease.
Thank you for that. And it's there. In other words, what we read as a very straightforward civil law statement, the rabbis in the Gemara will pry it open. I thought the use of can opener is probably not nice. Pry it open and find a basis for much more that's going on. And also matters of dispute, divrei rivot bisharecha, matters of arguments. Your neighbor's tree has a branch growing into your backyard. Okay? So you just rev up your newly bought tree cutter and you saw that limb off. Well, Donna, could that be a problem? Thank you. It's too wondrous for you. Okay. Yeah, I get that. That's a very, a learned thing. Oh, I don't know. Okay. Merle.
So, I mean, we have had friends who have had boundary issues because of a neighbor's tree or a neighbor's plant growing over, the millimeter piece of property that establishes what your property is or not. I mean, I suppose I could complain about what's going on right now, but we love our neighbor and it's sad that her tree is uprooted, but part of it, it's no longer on our side of the lawn. But I've seen issues with people, even if they want to add on to their house with that little piece of property that the neighbor next door is going to have a nervous breakdown over.
Yeah, there was a wonderful Clint Eastwood movie about sitting in his yard with his shotgun or something, and the neighbors next door, they come, what happens if a kid kicks a ball and lands in your grass? Does that kid have a right to, yes, all kinds of stuff. Tamara, would you want to explain this, Tamara? You put a posting in the chat, and it's a really relevant comment.
All I was saying is that the separation of wool and linen is very practical in a culture before dry cleaning, because as any homemaker knows, male or female, if you wash something of mixed fabrics like that, it's going to be ruined. So when the rabbi said it didn't make sense, I was wondering if it's because they were not homemakers and they didn't do the washing and they didn't understand that. But I haven't looked into it, just as
Yeah, I hear the comment, I've been wondering, and I hear Victor Hugo, Jacques, but okay, we're going to let it be just what. Thank you. For, okay. That reminds me, I read the New York Times this week about a new magnificent exhibit of Titian, Titian, Titian portraits. Apparently the largest gathering, and it's not big, largest gathering of Titian, who is one of not just a great, but a super great painter. And applying the standards of Me Too, so that maybe we have to put commentary around the Titian paintings because they portray rape and abuse of women. And so I went like this for about a half hour. I just didn't know what to say, and I was just wobbling back and forth. Okay, so we're going to have to put a little Post-it on each Titian. Ray is asking a question. Ray, where are you? Ray?
I am here. Can you folks hear me?
I can hear you. Absolutely.
Okay. I too was struck by Tamara's comment and wanted to do a sort of post facto little take on it. It reminds me a bit, feel like there's a family resemblance. If we look at how some Torah may have evolved rationally and with a perspective, or at least allowance, that Torah is at least somewhat a human enterprise. That's my prejudice. We'll leave that there. But there's a family resemblance for me between this and, for example, some laws of kashrut about do not eat the pig and do not leave the carcass for the third day, or shellfish, that it's easy to infer that they observe people eating shellfish or pig and getting sick afterwards. And if we admit that kind of inference, we can also equally infer that if they saw a mixed linen wool garment look hideous and weirdly shrunken unevenly after washing it, that too could have been interpreted as some sign that this is unclean and not allowed. And just as we now have refrigeration, we now do have dry cleaning. And if that's where the origin of these things is, things may have happened differently if Torah had evolved not in their time, but in our own.
I'm just reminded of my dry cleaner who has a sign still posted, dry cleaning will clean bacteria and all kinds of viruses. It just sort of puts it up there. It's kind of like, if you have COVID and you come in and let us put you in the dry cleaning machine, you will emerge healthy. So why bother with a vaccination when you can get dry cleaned? Does that make me an anti-vaxxer? I'm not sure. But in any event, yes, Ray, there is an ongoing, constant discussion about whether some mitzvot emerged out of the practical world of medical observation. Maimonides will speak clearly of the health benefits. Scholars today tend to disregard or refute that. They don't believe, and I find this very anti-Semitic, they don't believe that the authors of the Torah understood germ theory. So It's impossible for me to believe that a Jew could not have known that, even in the ancient times. But it is debated and it's not resolved. I can tell you my feeling, but it's a derivative feeling. I have to leave it to scholars. Ray, you are correct. It goes up there. By the way, I do want to mention that the unknown and the known origin, mishpat and chok, those are the two words which are used. Mishpat, which is a law that has rational basis and we can understand it. Chok, which is kind of like you do it because I say so, and without that kind of explanation. Okay, look, we went to one verse, and realized that this particular verse opens up the whole Talmud. It really does. It opens up because the way you interpret what appear to be fairly simple, straightforward pieces of legislation offer a massive opening. And I have to go back to what Fern said. It does bring into sharp focus the reality that even at its earliest origins, the boundaries between civil and religious law, I don't know, are non-existent or at least blurred. And they are. And that is part of what we live with today. In many ways, coming up in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be serving on a Beit Din. A Beit Din is a rabbinic court. Ha! I am going to be a judge, Steve Miller. I am going to be one of those people who will say things no one agrees with. The Beit Din deals with a conversion. So the Reform movement has Batei Din, rabbinic courts. And I'm going to sit with three rabbis to determine the completeness of a candidate to become Jewish, of the completeness of that person's preparation and kavanah, internal commitment. The only point I'm trying to make here is we adopt the Orthodox concept of a Beit Din and we call it a Beit Din. But just between the two of us, the Reform approach to a Beit Din is very different than an Orthodox Beit Din. So we too are involved in blurring the line. I, Stanley Davids, ordained a Reform rabbi, I am a judge on a rabbinic court. Most Orthodox rabbis, having recovered from a stroke from the experience of hearing that, would say, Chalila, God forbid, you on a Beit Din? You know, it's cultural appropriation. You have no right to use that term. In any event, it's a key point. The overlap, civil and religious, is very much with us. I want to continue. And appear before the Levitical.
A Beit Din that you would sit on, however, would have far more limited issues within your jurisdiction than an Orthodox Beit Din. I mean, can't you, if you even have a theft issue, can't you choose to go to a Beit Din rather than a civil court if you're Orthodox?
If you are Orthodox, going to a civil court is severely frowned upon.
Right.
Does it mean you can't? No, but it's severely, even Steve, in matters of civil law, right. You owe me money, whatever, I owe you money, forgive me, we'll make it easier. But if you go to a civil court, that is offensive to the community. Now, what if I'm sitting with my two other colleagues and we are constituting ourselves as a Beit Din and we decide to enlarge our authority and we're going to start, okay, let's start ruling on other matters.
You get laughed at.
The good news is nobody will care. Right? Nobody will care. So yes, thank you for pointing out that I am fundamentally irrelevant. Okay. And they appear before the Levitical priest or the shofet in charge at the time and present your problem. When they have announced to you the verdict of the case, you shall carry out the verdict that is announced to you from the place that God chose, observing scrupulously all of what you're told. Fascinating again. It says, and to the judge or whatever the Kohanim who are in that day. And the rabbis say, well, first of all, you folks, that's a big warning, that phrase. What's it warning against? It says, appear before the priest and so forth in charge at the time. What does that mean? That's a big thing. What is it saying? What is it saying? Well, what do you have here? At the time. Okay, Meryl.
That it could change, that the responses could change any moment. If it's at that time, then 5 seconds later, they may have a totally different response. I'm guessing.
Okay, let's keep going. Penina, brief answer. What do you think it might mean?
I think it's a matter of time. The time can pass by too long, then it's not valuable anymore. A person can die, the other person could be not around, or the priest himself. I mean, the Kohen Gadol wouldn't even be the same person, so it might be different. It has to be, today too, we have a limitation on time of how long can you really present a crime to a court if it's already like God knows how many years. I don't know exactly what it is today, but it's not valuable anymore because things could change.
Great. Tamara?
It also protects against having, let's say, my neighbor who is a priest making a decision. You have to be actually the one in office at that time, at that place. So it protects the authority and limits who can make the judgment.
Now, Tamara, this is maybe the first time I felt you thrust a knife at me. Are you saying that retired rabbis should get out of the way?
Definitely not. Definitely not. But what it is saying is that if you are not at the right office as the leading priest of that community at that time, then you can give an opinion, but it doesn't have a legal force as if you are the officially designated priest or judge at that community.
Yeah, I found myself reading this and thinking about Judge Ginsburg.
Yeah.
You can't go back and say, this is what she would have ruled. Her replacement is so inferior to her. And yet she is the judge. She is one of the Supreme Court judges today. And you can't go back and say, Ruth Bader Ginsburg would have responded differently. Yeah, it really hurts, but it's true. You only have recourse to the judge who is there, and that's the judge you have to follow. And sometimes Penina is correct, the case lasts too long, the judges change, die, whatever happens, and you can't go back to what was. You must deal with the people in authority now. Yeah, that is there, and that is difficult. That is difficult. And appear before the priest, the magistrate in charge at the time. Present your problem. They'll give a verdict. carry out the verdict. How important is that? For those people involved, one of my favorite institutions in the world is the Israel Religious Action Center, called IRAC. And you have to pronounce it carefully. It's not Iraq, it's IRAC, the Israel Religious Action Center. They go frequently, and my friend Uri Regev separately, frequently to the Israeli Supreme Court, and they get rulings very often in their favor. What's the problem? People don't follow. They don't do what the ruling says they must do. And it's very frustrating. You win, and people do not abide by the authority of the court. Steve, or that you're just adjusting? Oh, okay, you were just, okay, you were just adjusting. You weren't, okay, you're muted, which is wonderful. No,
But isn't that true now? I mean, in the world we live in, there are rulings and people don't bother to follow them because they don't like what the ruling is. Doesn't fit into their lifestyle or a community or whatever.
yeah. We do have a connection between basically police and courts, and things can be enforced. But yes, Merle, you're right. In the real world, there is often a gap between a judicial ruling and carrying it out. Let me just go forward with, this is too much fun. You have to carry it out, observe scrupulously, observe. You may not deviate from the verdict they announced to you, either to the left or to the right. Now, I want to say something. We all know who the Kohanim are, right? The Kohen, who? Effie, is that you? Yeah, what?
Yeah, Katz is a Kohen.
Oh, I thank you. I'm glad you're promoting yourself. That's fine. Okay, Katz is a Kohen. Now, what we forget, and this is just again a little secret. There was a huge battle over history within the Levi tribe as to who is a Kohen properly. This is no small matter. If I say to you that the Kohanim of today, which of course involves Effie in case he wants to mention himself again, are Zadokite, Z-A-D-O-K-I-T-E, Sadokite. They're Zadokite priests. There were, over hundreds of years, strong internal battles in the Levi family as to who is a legitimate Kohen. King David selected Zadok to be his official Kohen go-to guy because in the battle for David's own legitimacy, Zadok stood with him. You notice I didn't say Zadok is actually the most legitimate or more legitimate or whatever. I didn't say that. It was a political decision. Zadok stood with David. David said, whoa, all the descendants of Zadok are the Kohanim and you other guys are not. Where did this play out? What happened to some of the people who thought they were Kohanim, but King David said, no, you're not. What happened to them? Some of them moved north. Some of them moved into the kingdom of Israel later. I mean, there was no kingdom of Israel in the time of David, but by the time his grandchildren, some of them later. And they established temples and places of worship in the north to compete with Jerusalem. And they had their own line of priests. Tamara, do you want to fix my history, or how does that sound? Is that, oh, okay, thank you. All right, so we became a nation with Sadokite priests. That's how that family of Levi was certified. But it wasn't easy, and it took hundreds of years of competition and battle. Brad.
Well, I'm wondering if that's why it's repeated twice in this passage about the place that the Lord has chosen. There seems to be a magical relationship somehow between the correctness of the decision and the place where this is taking, where it's taking place.
You picked up, whoa, right at the moment that the class is due to end, you picked up the most important, absolutely significant, correct thing. It's not just that this author, the time, let's say King Josiah, if we assume, probably so. If we assume Josiah lived at a time already when there were competitive sanctuaries in the north, and there were competitive priests in the north. And the text in Deuteronomy is saying, Jerusalem and the Tzadokite priests, the other guys are not legitimate. Totally correct, Brad. Thank you. I am unfortunately, Penina, we're out of time today, but Brad, you nailed it. You nailed it. So what you're looking at here, all of this is a clear late effort to lock down Jerusalem and to lock down the Tzadokite priests. And what I don't know, and maybe I'll find out during the week, I don't understand why Jerusalem is never mentioned by name in Deuteronomy. Why the game? Is it a game? The place eternal will have chosen. You could have had fewer words. Say Jerusalem. It doesn't ever say Jerusalem like that in Deuteronomy. And I don't know why. And I'm putting out there as an open question. We can get back to it next week. Steve and Penina, I accept you're there. It's good. Aval higanu ad hasof. We've run out of time. Hannah Gale Gold will probably have other people to care for. And I love you guys. Shabbat Shalom. Don't forget Wednesday evening, the concert. Baruch Hu to Beethoven, whatever it was. Baruch Hu to Beethoven, or our anniversary, or Slichot, or the film series, or all the things that are going on. It's a happy, good time these last weeks in August before the high holy days. Have a beautiful Shabbat and a beautiful week. Send me your email addresses.
Don't you have to say the prayer, Rabbi?
Oh, shoot.
Good thing you didn't say the other word.
Our Kaddish list includes, thank you so much, Norman Cohn, who passed away this month, Norman Cohn, Joan Levine Eichberg, Edith Fisher, Marvin Frankel, Joyce Friedman, Sandra Geller, Jean Grossman, Howard Levison, Jeanette Peskin, Virginia Sandler, Jessica Allison Schroeder, Gabriel Weiss, Mimi Wolfen, Alvin Zapersky. And yortsites that have occurred during the past week: Eva Ackerman, Joanne Alfred, Joseph Ansel, Jack Berman, Ann Bernstein, Gabriel Bazar, Shakrola Bina, Anna Julia Benici de Ferrero, Dorothy Kamchi Borenstein, Eugene Borson, Sanford Brandt, Billy Burns, Doris Calderon, Linda Jane Cherry, Bernard Cohn, Jean Davidow, Lawrence Deutsch, Sam Delinko, Robert Eichberg, Frank Feiler, Sophie Feldman, Bart Feldmar, Edna Florence, Evelyn Friedman, Elsie Goodman, Maury Grossberg, Betty Lois Halper, Bruce Hockman, Sidney Hoffman, Marion Horn, Anthony Amarco, Marie Coleman, David Harry Karsh, Evelyn Kessler, Frederick Klein, Denise Helen Corman, Vivian Korn, Michael Krevin, Solomon David Kugler, Maurice Lazarus, William Bill Lerner, Harry Levison, Ellis Levy, Esther Levy, Leonard Lind, Abe Linker, Sabe Lipo, Murray Loderman, Sidney Mayer, Edie Michaels, Bessie Miller Bodick, Sylvia Oster, Beatrice Polovol, William Poltuck, Thelma Prince, Teresa Rouse, Gustav Reese, Rivian Roberts, Isidore Rosenberg, David Rosenthal, Mary Rosendale, Miriam Chilson Rothstein, Joralyn Salmonson, Leonard Saxon, Ruth Shapira, Albert Schildkraut, Walter Schoenfeld, Michael Schwartz, Soletta Schwartz, Larry Searman, Jeremy Seidel, Nathan Schaffer, Raquel Shanbrum, Wilfred Chohan, Jacob Silver, Lillian Silver, Millicent Small, Gertrude Snukall, Marion Toshman, Stephen Tomar, Alice Walker, Rose Wegg, Clifford Whites, Jack LeBlanc, Sumner Yaffe, William Young, Zelda Rubin. These are the names that I have. If you have other additional names, please say them out loud, and we will join with them and saying Kaddish for all of those who do not have people to say Kaddish for them. So we join together in Kaddish, Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Bi'alma Divra Chirute, Bi'amlich Malchute, B'chayechon Uvyomechon, V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kariv, V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mavorach Li'olam Li'omei Amaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitalev, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudisha Barichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom v'imromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
All very, very much.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I wanted to pick up, did I pick up any other? No. Oh, Kaddish for Sarah Cohn. Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll God willing. We'll see each other Wednesday evening. I want to hear that. Okay. Bye-bye, Harv, Mara. Bye-bye. Bye, 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 bye. Sue.
Bye, bye. Hi, Howard.